In the history of cinema, a woman's beauty has always been viewed as her most powerful weapon. But for the black beauties of the past century, their natural look, especially their full voluptuous lips, was never treated as a pure gift of art. Amidst a Hollywood dominated by shadow networks and racial prejudice, those lips were inadvertently turned into a dangerous currency of seduction, fiercely desired, yet simultaneously feared as a threat that needed to be controlled and silenced at all costs. Behind the radiant films and the glamorous red carpet smiles lay dark files that studios desperately tried to bury. It was a place where actresses' lips were used as collateral on the poker tables of male superstars. These were the ruthless hidden corners where women were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements in exchange for their permanent disappearance from the screen, coerced into posing as fake lovers to shield the secrets of others, or even subjected to vile acts of jealousy like lipsticks laced with fine glass powder and corrosive chemicals right before showtime. In today's video, we will not just admire them. We will unearth the never-before-revealed files of 17 black beauties who possessed the most captivating lips in Hollywood history. 1. Annazette Chase. Hollywood's most captivating lips turned into a silent alibi tool under a layer of shaping wax. In the 1970s, Annazette Chase's lips alone were powerful enough to define an entire commercial segment in Hollywood. Top photographers of the era spared no praise, raving about her full, natural, and perpetually parted lips, a natural trait that made her the most valuable face of the blaxploitation film genre. While studios saw those lips as a money-making tool, behind the lens, that absolute spotlight became the very thing that bound her life. An internal agreement file from the studio's legal department, discovered later, revealed that Annazette had no autonomy over her personal life. She was orchestrated to appear alongside figures arranged by Julian Vane, a media crisis manager for the elite, in order to create perfect public relations cover stories. Mr. Henderson, a private studio driver from that era, recalled a grim detail. Many late nights, I was ordered to park at the back entrance of a Bel Air mansion. Annazette would walk out, stumbling and disoriented from the side effects of Thorazine, a heavy sedative her manager required her to take to keep her quiet and submissive at crowded events. Her signature bright red lips were often smeared with saliva because her facial muscles couldn't close properly. To address her facial tremors, a classic side effect of sedative abuse, the makeup department applied a technical solution. They coated her lips with a specialized ultra-adhesive shaping wax, typically used in special effects makeup or mortuary cosmetics, then layered it with heavy theatrical matte lipstick. This wax held Annazette's lips rigid in a fixed smile, preventing any distortion in front of the cameras. The true tragedy struck in 1974. Annazette was inadvertently dragged into a faked alibi setup for an A-list actor connected to a murder case at the Beverly Hills Hotel. According to county police archive documents, the studio brought a deeply asleep Annazette to the scene to snap a few diversionary photos, aiming to prove that the actor was with her at the time of the incident. Upon waking up and realizing she had been turned into a false witness for a severe crime, Annazette fiercely demanded to see her private attorney to make a statement to the police. The studio immediately forced a medical intervention to bury the incident. They contacted a doctor at the private St. Jude clinic, placing her under mandatory isolation and observation under the guise of substance-induced psychosis. There, she was injected with potent sedatives that temporarily paralyzed her jaw muscles and tongue, leaving her unable to articulate words clearly. A subsequent arrest for disturbing the peace at a press conference was staged to legitimize her long-term institutionalization in the eyes of the public. Right after the incident, the studio unilaterally terminated Annazette's contract, citing unstable mental health. The films featuring her were gradually pulled from theaters and archives. The lips, once deemed the most captivating in Hollywood, ultimately existed only as a clinical description of mechanical trauma to the oral region within old medical files at the St. Jude Clinic. 2. Brenda Sykes, Hollywood's most captivating lips turned into collateral in a Las Vegas kingpin's gambling game. In the early 1970s, everyone in the American film world knew Brenda Sykes. Possessing a natural, bow-shaped lip line with slightly upturned corners that oozed provocation, Brenda quickly became a sex symbol, dominating major magazine covers of the era, even prompting boxing legend Muhammad Ali to publicly express his admiration. But in Hollywood, when lips are praised as the most perfect, they are simultaneously slapped with a price tag. Brenda's lips were no exception to the rule, except their price wasn't paid with a studio check, but with a crumpled napkin on a VIP table in a Las Vegas casino. On the night of October 14, 1973, Brenda's world suddenly shrunk into a room that didn't exist on any floor plan of the Caesars Palace Hotel. It was called the Shadow Box, a secluded VIP room with windows covered in dark-tinted film to ensure the absolute privacy of the players. In a room heavy with the smell of cigar smoke and hard liquor, a dirty card game took place between an influential media tycoon and a studio executive on the brink of bankruptcy. When the debt in chips on the table hit $1. $8 million, the desperate, asset-depleted executive pushed a signed paper napkin to the center of the table. The paper carried no monetary denomination, but rather a transfer agreement. Full commercial likeness rights and exclusive contract of Brenda Sykes for a duration of 5 years. Brenda was sitting at the small bar in the corner of the room, sipping a drink, completely unaware that she had just been turned into collateral for a losing card game. When the final card flipped to decide the winner, the media tycoon stood up and walked straight toward Brenda. In front of everyone present, he didn't say a word. He just violently rubbed his finger across her trembling, full red lips, an action marking physical ownership over the prize asset he had just won. But the media tycoon didn't just want to own those lips on screen. He needed them to stay completely silent about what had happened in the dark that night. An independent investigation later by Elias Thorne, a former private detective specializing in tracking dirty money in Las Vegas, uncovered a file coded 77-alpha. The documents showed that Brenda had accidentally overheard details about money laundering through film projects between casino owners and the studio on the very night of the card game. To prevent any information from leaking out, an isolation campaign against Brenda was immediately deployed from Century City. According to a classified internal memo from the Casting Society discovered later, studios received orders. Absolutely do not cast Sykes in lead roles. Remove all promotional images featuring her within 24 hours. The intimidation didn't stop at her professional life. It quietly crept into her most private space, right onto her vanity table. One evening in late 1973, upon returning to her West Hollywood apartment, Brenda discovered her signature red lipstick snapped in half, placed next to a brief, handwritten note. "Keep your mouth shut or disappear." And the cold warning targeted her lips directly, turning the very thing that brought her fame into a direct threat to her life. Under pressure from threats of a staged car accident, Brenda was forced to completely withdraw from the entertainment industry. The Hollywood media was paid to report that she voluntarily retired due to personal reasons and a psychological crisis. In reality, the lips once deemed the most captivating in Hollywood had to be tightly sealed in silence for decades, accepting disappearance in exchange for safety in the shadows. 3. Marguerite Ray, Hollywood's most seductive lips. Using dark crimson lipstick to tighten the grip on Washington politicians. In the 1970s, while other starlets strained to project their range of expressions before the camera lens, Marguerite Ray used Hollywood's most seductive lips as a master key to unlock the corridors of power in Washington. Her lips possessed a striking shape, a deep, pronounced philtrum, contrasting sharply against an upper lip that held a firm, proud curve. On the silver screens of that era, Marguerite never wore the bright, mainstream colors of the masses. She remained fiercely loyal to a dark crimson lipstick, a somber, muted tone that refused to reflect the studio spotlights, yet commanded a natural dominance whenever she pressed her mouth shut. The true power of those lips didn't belong to commercial cinema. It was forged behind the tightly locked doors of the studio dressing rooms. There, her closest wardrobe assistant of 12 years, Elena Vance, stood as the sole witness to a grueling, severe training regimen. Elena recounted that what Marguerite always carried with her wasn't a film script, but a red leather-bound notebook detailing the exact lip characteristics of the girls under her wing. In their private sessions, Marguerite didn't teach dialogue delivery or emotional range. She forced the recruits to stand before a mirror for hours on end, using a tailor's small silver caliper to precisely measure every millimeter of their lip corner opening and the thickness of their lower lip. The girls had to learn to control the minute muscle fibers around their mouths to maintain a fixed, indifferent parting of exactly 1.5 millimeters, while mastering how to swallow saliva and speak without shifting the painted lip line. This brutal training drove many to tears as their facial muscles repeatedly seized with cramps, leaving the corners of their mouths cracked and bleeding. This severity was never meant for ordinary aesthetics. Marguerite understood the lethal value of lips that never deformed under pressure. The indifferent parting, often dismissed as mere flirtation, was actually a flawless disguise. When leaning in at absolute close range to whisper sensitive intelligence into a partner's ear, from leaked numbers in a tax bill saving the studio from bankruptcy, to the exact hour the FTC was set to audit a rival theater chain, the girls had to keep their facial muscles completely frozen. The lipstick couldn't smudge, the voice couldn't tremble, and no personal expression could leak out before seasoned politicians. They appeared as silent sirens bearing messages that could alter the entire landscape of a negotiation. That battlefield was the Velvet Room, a secluded lounge at the Century Plaza Hotel where major political deals were masked as lavish cinematic banquets. Silas Vane, a former security guard there, confirmed that Marguerite always appeared as the silent orchestrator, her dark crimson lips never cracking a social smile. She actively dispatched the girls to the tables of U.S. senators, equipping them with specially modified lipsticks featuring a hollow compartment beneath the wax core. Tucked inside this small space was a tightly rolled sliver of paper containing private phone numbers, Swiss bank account codes, or abbreviated profit-sharing percentages. With a simple handoff under the table or by slickly dropping the lipstick into the target's coat pocket, the girls completed the information exchange without a single wiretap detecting a thing. Every detail was meticulously calculated, from the staying power of the lipstick to the perfect timing for making a proposal. Elena Vance recalled witnessing Marguerite calmly wipe a wine-red lipstick stain off a politician's collar with a tissue in a hotel backstage corridor, gently cleaning the smudge while leaning close to whisper a reminder of her leverage over his Senate seat. Hours later, this politician signed off on a multi-million-dollar tax exemption for the partner studio's film investment funds. In the Velvet Room, kisses held no emotion. They were shadow commitments sealed right after shoulder-to-shoulder whispers beside the sheen of lipstick wax. 4. Ina Hartman, lips replacing cash and the elite's beauty gamble. In the early 1970s, Ina Hartman's lips were considered the gold standard of proud seduction on the covers of major black magazines like Jet. With a sharply defined Cupid's bow and a naturally full lower lip, Ina possessed a special allure that helped her quickly step into major television film projects alongside top leading men. But behind the splendid frames and the aura of a rising black star, those iconic lips were unwittingly dragged into the cold, ruthless gambles of tycoons inside closed mansions in the Bel Air area. The truth about these party nights only began to leak through the account of Dante Rossi, a former private security guard who spent 8 years patrolling ultra-VIP private residences in West Los Angeles. Dante recalled late nights when poker games worth hundreds of thousands of dollars between studio executives, financiers, and A-list male actors stretched until the following morning. When suitcases of cash were depleted, but the thirst for gambling had not stopped, a special type of collateral began to appear on the table. The ownership of exclusive contracts and the presence of young actresses under the studio's wing. Ina Hartman, with her seductive lips that were a media magnet, was turned into a high-value chip on the playing table. Her kisses and companionship were directly priced by the tycoons to deduct from gambling losses right on the spot. This sordid connection would have remained forever in the dark if a handwritten debt receipt from a 1973 party night had not leaked out. The paper explicitly stated the transfer of the rights to use Ina's commercial likeness to offset a $150,000 gambling debt of a well-known producer. However, when this information began to whisper through the backstage, Ina received no protection or sympathy. On the contrary, the fierce jealousy within the film industry turned her into a target of attack. A group of rival actresses actively contacted anonymous gossip columnists of the tabloids at the time. They distorted the truth, fabricating the story to make it seem as though Ina was the one who actively used her beauty to exchange for major roles in order to destroy her reputation and eliminate her from potential projects. The final fatal blow came not from the tabloids, but from the very legal office of the studio where she signed her contract. To protect the reputation of the VIP actors and politicians present on that fateful poker night, the studio quickly activated the morality clause in Ina's contract. This was the ultimate legal tool that helped the studio unilaterally terminate the contract with the actress without compensation, while simultaneously crushing any risk that Ina might speak out to expose this underground beauty debt settlement system. In 1975, Ina Hartman's contract was abruptly canceled, and her entire image was removed from promotional campaigns, forcing the starlet to silently withdraw from the entertainment industry while at the peak of her career, leaving her once seductive lips as a silent witness to the cruelty behind high society gambles. 5. Marlene Clark, Human Shield. Lips and the romantic deception from the East Coast political elite. Marlene Clark possessed a beauty that felt like a rejection. At a time when Hollywood idolized full, voluptuous lips, she chose to go against the crowd with a thin lip shape, sharp as a razor, always coated in dark purple or deep wine-red lipstick. Those lips were cold, promising no warmth, but it was precisely this mysterious contrast that led enthusiasts to crown her as the owner of Hollywood's most seductive lips of the era. A unique icon that unwittingly turned her into the perfect bait in a media setup orchestrated by the East Coast political elite. This underground connection originated from a secret relationship between Marlene and a prominent lady belonging to the most influential political family in New York at the time. In the summer of 1975, when a few freelance paparazzi began trailing them and captured sensitive rolls of film together at a secluded apartment in Greenwich Village, the risk of a same-sex scandal threatened to ruin the family's entire political career right on the eve of the election campaign. To extinguish the media firestorm, Marlene accepted a silence agreement presented by her lovers representing attorneys. She agreed to use her very own iconic lips as bait to distract public opinion. Marlene actively appeared at Manhattan nightclubs, intentionally approaching and luring the most prominent gossip columnists and veteran photographers into prearranged private dates. Leo Vane, a former photographer from that era, was one of those who directly witnessed and participated in those news-hunting nights. He recalled that Marlene always appeared glamorous with her familiar dark purple lipstick to draw every camera lens toward herself. She voluntarily provided reporters with fabricated stories about her own promiscuous private life, even letting them snap photos of forced intimate moments with other male actors to completely mask the existence of the political lady. But behind the glittering cover photos, reality played out very differently. Leo Vane remembered the moment he accidentally peeked through the dressing room door slit at a Soho nightclub. Marlene stood before the mirror, using a tissue to violently rub her tightly pressed lips to the point of bleeding. Her eyes were empty, filled with disgust at her own reflection. Yet the moment she stepped outside, those lips had to flash a proud smile for the cameras. Marlene's silent sacrifice successfully protected the lady's reputation and helped that family safely navigate the 1976 election. However, the true fatal blow landed immediately afterward. To erase all traces and prevent any future blackmail risks, the very family Marlene had protected actively launched a smear campaign targeting her directly. Their attorneys leaked fabricated documents to major newsrooms, accusing Marlene of actively approaching, staging setups, and extorting the lady. From a protector, her lips, once deemed the most seductive in Hollywood, were labeled by the media as a high-end fraudulent tool specialized in profiteering from politicians. The studio quickly canceled Marlene's ongoing contracts to avoid implications involving major political donors. Marlene Clark was pushed into absolute isolation and forced to depart from major artistic projects just as her career was maturing. Until the final years of her life, she remained loyal to that melancholy dark purple lipstick like an unbreakable habit. A quiet vestige of a beauty who had accepted serving as a human shield in the brutal power games of the political upper class. 6. Azizi Johari, the trophy of the high-rise suites and the covenant of erasure. In the world of black photographic models circa 1975, Azizi Johari's lips were more than just a defining feature. They were a type of foreign currency possessing terrifying power. With a thick lower lip, perpetually glossy as if awaiting a kiss, Azizi quickly caught the eyes of the moguls heading major media conglomerates in Los Angeles. Instead of being propelled into a cinematic career, Azizi was turned into a special gift at private parties within high-end apartments in the Century City area. These hidden corners began to leak through the account of Marcus Sterling, a former security officer who once served at the secluded events of the plutocrats. Marcus revealed that Azizi was nearly monopolized by a powerful group of shareholders, men who viewed possessing the services of the woman with the sexiest lips in Playboy as a testament to upper-class status. The true tragedy erupted when Azizi became the target of a reigning A-list star of the era, a woman notorious for her jealous nature whose husband was a regular at Azizi's kissing parties. And to dismantle her rival, this starlet orchestrated an arrest at the Beverly Hills Hotel on charges that Azizi possessed prohibited substances and was involved in a high-end prostitution ring. In reality, it was a perfect trap to humiliate Azizi's reputation, transforming her forbidden fruit lips into a symbol of debauchery in the eyes of the public. When the incident threatened to drag a series of major names into legal jeopardy, a system of scandal fixers immediately intervened. Rather than bringing the case to light, the media moguls presented a brutal choice. Azizi had to sign a silence contract worth millions of dollars, an unthinkable figure at that time. In exchange, she had to immediately evaporate from all artistic projects, have her name scrubbed from casting lists, and disappear from Hollywood forever. Marcus Sterling recounted that during the final signing, Azizi used her iconic red lipstick to slash a long line across the contract as an act of ultimate resentment before leaving in silence. Since then, the woman who possessed those most enchanting lips has existed only as a somber legend in the memories of a few spectators, a beauty bought outright and buried by the power of filthy dollars. 7. Judy Pace, the lips that settled. Gambling debts and the tragedy of the Las Vegas glass cage. In the film world of the 1970s, Judy Pace emerged as a phenomenon with lips so full they seemed surreal, a symbol of sensual provocation that any man would desire. But the bitter reality that the media never dared to reveal was that those lips never truly belonged to her. They were a debt handed over at a notorious poker table at the Sahara Casino. According to Benny the Sparrow Rossi, a VIP room manager at the time, the air that night was thick with cigar smoke and desperation. In a fit of drunken gambling lust in 1974, the powerful director patronizing Judy made a fateful move. When cash and stocks ran dry, he put up Judy Pace's exclusive contract and beauty as the final collateral to pay off a debt to a casino mogul nicknamed the Las Vegas Silver Fox. When the final card flipped, Judy's fate was sealed right there in that gray haze. She officially became the private property of that mogul, a commodity bought outright by a royal flush on a poker table. From that night on, Judy Pace vanished from prestigious film sets to begin life as a songbird in a most luxurious but strictly guarded penthouse. This humiliating dark corner was described by Benny Rossi as a horrific spiritual torment. Judy was not permitted to refuse any request from the mogul, especially the requirement to appear at private parties to provide diplomatic kisses for his business partners. Her legendary lips, which millions of spectators admired, were now turned into a tool to seal filthy contracts. She was forced to live in a gilded glass cage, where every step was monitored by a system of scandal fixers, men ready to use force to ensure that the secret of her presence never leaked onto the strip. After 2 years of living in captivity and humiliation, Judy Pace plotted a bloody escape on a stormy night in 1976. She risked her life to steal a bodyguard's car keys and bolted into the street, hoping to reach the press for help. However, the power of the Las Vegas elite was vaster than she imagined. The fixer system was faster, orchestrating a horrific collision right in the heart of the strip. Benny Rossi revealed a bone-chilling detail. The accident was not intended to take her life, but was calculated with physical precision to inflict the heaviest damage on her face, specifically targeting the destruction of her lips, the only weapon she intended to use to denounce their crimes. It was a symbolic and cruel punishment. Anyone who intended to use beauty to escape the control of the elite would be stripped of that very beauty in the most painful way. The consequence of the accident was a total erasure of identity. Immediately after that night, medical records at the local hospital were destroyed or completely altered by powerful hands. The studio and her agent simultaneously issued announcements that Judy Pace had secretly retired to settle and marry abroad. In reality, she was pushed into an isolated nursing home with a disfigured face and a completely collapsed psyche. The lips that were once the pinnacle of sensuality were now nothing but tangled scars, silent evidence of the crimes of those who viewed women as mindless playing cards. The disappearance of Judy Pace was not a personal choice or the forgetfulness of time, but a systematic liquidation of beauty. A bloody warning sent to any black beauty who dared to challenge the underground rules of the sinful entertainment capital. 8. Ta-Tanisha, the poison-sodden lips and the survival trap. Trap of the dungeon. In the shadows of Hollywood in the late 1970s, as the glow of television dramas began to fade, Ta-Tanisha fell into a cruel romantic snare that led her to the depths of humiliation. She possessed lips characterized by an exquisite elegance, yet always tinged with a sense of defiance. A beauty that should have been the pillar of her career, but was instead transformed into a criminal tool by a drug kingpin with tangled ties to major film studios. These raw, hidden truths were revealed by Raymond "Ray" Miller, a former narcotics inspector who directly monitored the case. Ray recounted that instead of being sponsored for major roles, Ta-Tanisha was coerced into using her seductive lips to carry out death missions. She was forced to hold small packets of heroin inside her mouth to pass through security checkpoints at LAX airport, relying on the fact that security officers were often distracted by her haughty beauty and mysteriously sealed lips. The life of a narcotics muse completely collapsed one evening in 1978 when she was betrayed to the police by a female colleague, another, Rose, serving under the same kingpin. The envious rivalry among black beauties at the time was so brutal that one was willing to step over the corpse of another to claim the sole position of favor. Ray Miller described the scene of Ta-Tanisha's arrest. She offered no resistance, only silently spitting out heroin packets soaked in blood and saliva from lips that were swollen due to chemical exposure. It was the moment the beauty of a star was officially crushed under the heel of the legal system and the betrayal of a lover. The studio immediately severed all ties, scrubbing her name from projects as if she had never existed, leaving her to face terrifying sentences alone. During her years in solitary confinement, Ta-Tanisha's tragedy did not stop at the loss of freedom. In the darkness of the dungeon, her beauty, and specifically those lips once admired by millions, became a cruel instrument of survival. According to the account of a former cellmate, Tatanisha had to use her remaining looks to trade for protection from prison gangs. Those lips, which once belonged to literary dialogue and on-screen kisses, now had to serve filthy, clandestine agreements in exchange for a decent meal or the silence of corrupt prison guards. Tatanisha's disappearance from Hollywood was not because her time had passed, but was the consequence of a systematic chain of harm, transforming a muse into a sacrificial pawn in the games of moguls. 9. Judy Ann Elder, The Black Contract. Lips and the Fall from a Sensitive Tape. In the early 1980s, Judy Ann Elder was not only a formidable stage actress, but also possessed lips considered the gold standard of sensuality for the era. Full, healthy, yet carrying an irresistibly haunting allure. That beauty transformed her into the #1 icon of desire for Black American men and opened the doors to the most lucrative lip cosmetic advertising contracts. However, behind the glamorous posters lay a raw truth about the price of advancement. According to Sarah Jenkins, a former media assistant who worked at West Coast Studios, Judy Ann's seductive lips had actually been turned into a flesh-and-blood covenant. In exchange for a career-defining role and the status of lipstick queen, she was drawn into a high-risk sex and money relationship with a notorious media mogul, where kisses and the most private moments were recorded as a form of insurance for her loyalty. The nightmare began when a jealous industry rival accidentally discovered the existence of this sensitive tape. Instead of using it for blackmail, this individual chose a more cruel path, leaking stills from the tape on the very eve of Judy Ann signing a global representation contract for a major cosmetics brand. Sarah Jenkins recalled the atmosphere thick with horror at the agency office that morning. The prepared contracts were shredded, and Judy Ann's phone lines were completely disconnected. The scandal not only exposed the debauched exchange, but focused specifically on her lips. Once a symbol of elegance, they were now smeared as a tool of depravity and political extortion. Studio management immediately launched an identity erasure campaign, recalling every publication featuring her face to protect the image of the media mogul. The aftermath was one of the most painful freefalls in 1980s Hollywood history. Judy Ann Elder was stripped of all titles, lost massive advertising fees, and was shunned by filmmakers overnight. Her attempts to clear her name were extinguished by a professional system of scandal fixers. Sarah Jenkins revealed a bitter detail. In the apartment sealed after the scandal, hundreds of lipsticks were found broken and discarded by Judy Ann, a desperate act of self-destruction as she realized her lips no longer belonged to her, but had been turned into a cursed commodity. Her brilliant career was crucified by a sensitive tape, leaving those lips forever as a great question mark regarding the trade-offs and cruelty of the power games played behind the camera lens. 10. Ketty Lester, the Phoenix Lips and the Chemical Assassination Behind the Scenes. Possessing lips in the deep crimson hue of aged wine, Ketty Lester mesmerized audiences not only with her beauty, but also with a voice praised by critics as the breath of an angel. However, behind the velvet lights of the Apollo Theater lay a sinister plot aimed directly at her most seductive symbol. According to Marcus Thorne, a former stage manager present on that fateful night in 1968, Ketty became the target of a calculated beauty assassination. A female colleague, who always stood in Ketty's shadow, sneaked into the dressing room and swapped her wine-red lipstick with a mixture containing silver nitrate and highly potent corrosive chemicals. Marcus recalled the horrific scene. Immediately after Ketty applied the lipstick, her lips began to swell and burn intensely, just moments before she stepped onto the stage. The chemical shock did not only destroy the delicate epithelium, but also caused toxic inflammation of the vocal cords, stripping Ketty of her God-given voice for 2 grueling years. An internal investigation by the record label was immediately suppressed by the intervention of the patrons backing that female colleague, rebranding the assassination attempt as a common cosmetic allergy accident. Throughout her recovery, Ketty was mocked by the Hollywood media as a washed-up star with flawed lips, while the raw truth of the physical and mental agony she endured remained hidden within sealed medical records. Marcus Thorne revealed that she had to undergo dozens of painful surgeries to reconstruct her smile. Each scar on her lips served as a testament to the brutal betrayal of colleagues of her own skin color in the survival war of the cinematic capital. Ketty Lester's return after 2 years of silence was a direct slap to the faces of those who had deliberately tried to destroy her. Instead of using thick makeup to hide the faint scars, she transformed them into a symbol of resilience, a new, profound aesthetic style. From then on, her lips carried a melancholic yet powerful beauty, ensuring every song she sang contained the fierce vitality of a woman who had passed through the gates of death. Marcus Thorne asserted that the failed assassination not only failed to kill Ketty's career, but actually helped her escape the control of the moguls who enjoyed molding women's beauty. Her phoenix lips remain forever a reminder that a woman's true power lies not in flawless perfection, but in the ability to rise strongly from the most cowardly acts of vengeance. 11. Vicki Anderson. The front lips and the erasure campaign in the name of pathology. In the early years of the 1970s, Vicki Anderson was regarded as the embodiment of sweetness, with lips that perpetually held a pouting, sulky allure, a beauty weapon that helped her dominate the covers of black magazines. However, behind that perfect exterior lay a humiliating covenant that record label management had coerced her into signing. According to Lena Rivers, a former image consultant who worked closely with Vicki, she was transformed into a professional front lover. Vicki's job was to use her seductive lips and artificial intimacy before the camera to mask the true sexual orientation of A-list male stars. Men who generated massive revenue for the label but were not permitted to come out as gay. Lena Rivers recalled the method-acting photo sessions at the Hyatt House Hotel, where Vicki had to perform passionate kisses with men for whom she felt absolutely nothing, solely to protect Hollywood's money-making machinery. The nightmare erupted when a young starlet, envious of the favor the studio bestowed upon Vicki, gathered script drafts that explicitly detailed how Vicki was to act out romance at public events. Instead of sparking an investigation into the studio's manipulation, this information was leaked as a beauty for sale scandal. When Vicki decided she would endure no more and threatened to go public with the identities of the male stars she had fronted for, the scandal fixer system unleashed its most brutal counterattack. They did not use violence. Instead, they employed a character assassination campaign. Falsified medical records claiming she suffered from severe drug addiction and showed signs of schizophrenia were leaked to the press overnight. The consequence was the total collapse of an icon. Magazines simultaneously canceled their contracts, and the image of her pouting lips was rebranded with the label of a dangerous psychopath. Lena Rivers revealed a heartbreaking detail. On the final day of her expulsion from the studio, Vicki attempted to scream the truth, but security personnel injected her with a potent sedative and hauled her off to a secluded psychiatric clinic. The lips that were once the desire of millions of men were now permanently banned from appearing in any media, a death sentence for her career. The sudden disappearance of Vicki Anderson was not a voluntary retirement, but the result of a machinery that crushed her beauty the moment she intended to unmask them, leaving those lips forever silent behind the doors of sealed hospital wards. 12. Hattie Winston, the Shadow Covenant lips and the shocking Broadway glass powder plot. Hattie Winston's lips were a strange gold standard of contradiction. While the upper lip was sharp and slender, as if meticulously carved by a blade, the lower lip possessed a soft velvet thickness, creating a suppressed sensuality that left anyone facing her breathless. But behind the brilliant lights of the Broadway stage, that beauty was the key that drew her into the vortex of a secret elite club known as the Velvet Archway. According to revelations from Arthur Sterling, a veteran lighting technician at the Majestic Theater, Hattie's lips were not just for singing. They were a sensual symbol sought after by powerful moguls during Shadow Covenant parties after the curtains fell, gatherings where artistic contracts were signed with bartered kisses. The tragedy struck on a major opening night in 1978, when the envy of a young starlet mutated into a criminal act. This anonymous rival surreptitiously swapped Hattie's signature red lipstick with a mixture containing fine glass powder and numbing chemicals. Arthur Sterling recalled the horrific moment in the dressing room. The instant Hattie applied the lipstick, the glass powder embedded itself into the delicate epithelium, causing her lips to bleed and swell immediately. However, instead of receiving medical aid, Hattie was shoved into a far more brutal media trap. A pre-hired private investigator snapped photos of her standing in the dimly lit room with lips covered in a strange white powder, actually the mixture of glass and makeup, which the tabloids instantly fabricated as evidence of illicit substance use. During elite flesh parties, this scandal was elaborately staged to transform Hattie from a victim into a degenerate in the public eye. To prevent a deeper investigation and to protect the identities of the powerful figures within the Velvet Archway, studio moguls coerced Hattie into accepting a humiliating silence agreement. She was forced to relinquish leading roles in major upcoming film projects and retreat behind the scenes like a ghost in exchange for her police record being scrubbed clean. Those lips, once the sculpted masterpiece of Broadway, now bore scars hidden beneath thick layers of powder. A silent testament to a shadow covenant where the honor of a black woman was crushed to preserve the artificial purity of those standing in the shadows of power. 13. Lonette McKee, The Rebellious Lips and the Sentence of Silence. Following falsified apologies. In the mid-1970s, when the film Sparkle elevated Lonette McKee to the ranks of the most promising beauties, her heart-shaped lips with a succulent lower lip became a sensual obsession for men. However, behind that provocative allure lay a sharp intellect and a spirit of resistance that could not be tamed. According to Clara Bennett, a former media assistant at Warner Brothers, Lonette was envied not only for her dominant beauty, but also because she refused to become a talking doll for white executives. The tragedy began when she was caught in an intelligence trap set by political rivals and white colleagues who feared their positions were being shaken. The shocking event erupted in 1977 when bedroom images of Lonette with an undercover federal agent were calculatedly leaked. Clara Bennett revealed a previously undisclosed dark corner. This was an elaborately staged drama intended to topple Lonette while she was secretly using her fame to solicit financial support for a black rights organization. The Hollywood media of the time immediately pounced, distorting the narrative to claim she had used her beauty weapon and seductive lips to bait classified information, transforming her from a genuine artist into a traitor in the public eye. The pinnacle of humiliation occurred when studio moguls coerced Lonette into a live national television interview to clear her name. That night, under the harsh studio lights, Lonette was forced to use her rebellious lips to utter falsified apologies, admitting to crimes she had never committed. Clara Bennett recalled standing behind the scenes, witnessing Lonette's lips tremble as she struggled to maintain a forced smile, while her eyes welled with tears of resentment. Following that night, Lonette's career was completely blockaded. She was stripped of her right to free speech and gradually vanished from major projects. The lips that were once a symbol of freedom became a witness to a cruel sentence of silence, leaving a sorrowful low note in the history of the black roses crushed within the cinematic capital. 14. Teresa Graves, The Currency Lips and the Life or Death Gamble in Las Vegas. In the public eye of the 1970s, Teresa Graves was the embodiment of strength, starring as the female lead in Get Christie Love. But the reality of her life was far more bitter. She was merely a bad debt settled through her beauty. According to the authentic account of Sammy Moretti, a former manager of the VIP rooms at the Riviera Hotel, Teresa was effectively traded during a night thick with the stench of cigars and hard liquor. A B-list director, deeply entrenched in gambling debt, recklessly wagered her exclusive contract against a notorious casino mogul in a desperate attempt to recoup his losses. When the final card was revealed, Teresa officially became the private property of that tycoon, transformed from a rising star into a plaything for the clandestine games of the ultra-wealthy. This dark corner was so filthy that the media never dared to approach it. Teresa was forced to live like a caged bird in a secluded mansion in the Nevada desert, where she had to use her seductive lips to serve liquor and entertain powerful men during debauched parties. Sammy Moretti recalled nights seeing her appear with a forced smile. Lips that were once the pride of black beauty were now merely tools to mask a humiliating captivity. Every attempt to call for help or contact the outside world was completely severed. The climax came on a rainy night in 1977 when Teresa risked her life to escape. A horrific car accident on the Strip was meticulously orchestrated to teach her a lesson rather than take her life. That brutal collision did not target her body, but was aimed directly at her face. Shards of glass tore through her legendary lips, Teresa's most precious asset, disfiguring them permanently. Sammy revealed that this was a cold sentence passed by the casino bosses to ensure she could never return to the screen and expose their sordid secrets. Following the event, the media simultaneously reported that she had retired to pursue her religious faith. But the truth was that she had to flee from the flashbulbs due to the agony of her destroyed face. Teresa Graves vanished from Hollywood, carrying a silent secret of how a pinnacle of beauty was dismembered on a poker table, leaving a haunting void in the history of beauties stripped of both their lives and their most radiant smiles. 15. Marilyn Joy, The Mirror Room, and the Slave Contract, Shrouded in Paranoia. In the world of B-movies in the 1970s, Marilyn Joy was more than just an actress. She was a flesh-and-blood temptation manifested through lips that were perpetually indifferent, yet dangerously inviting. However, that very weaponized sex appeal turned her into prime prey for the deviant obsessions of the Hollywood ruling class. Frankie Moretti, a former camera assistant who worked at various independent studios, revealed a bone-chilling truth about the so-called slave contract Marilyn was coerced into signing. Behind the steamy footage lay a systematic campaign of confinement and abuse, where the beauty of a black woman was disregarded as nothing more than an experimental object. The tragedy reached its peak in 1976 when a powerful director, insanely obsessed with Marilyn's lips, orchestrated a staged disappearance while she was returning home from the studio. In reality, Marilyn was taken to a secluded mansion in Topanga Canyon and held captive for an entire week in a bizarre mirror room. Frankie Moretti recounted being forced to bring equipment there to record scenes of carnal humiliation, where the lens focused exclusively on Marilyn's lips while she was starved and psychologically tortured. The surrounding mirrors made it impossible for her to escape her own face and her violated lips, inflicting profound psychological trauma. When Marilyn risked her life to escape and ran directly to the police station with swollen lips and in a state of mental panic, the Hollywood scandal-cleaning machinery shifted into high gear immediately. Instead of investigating the kidnapping, the media, having received generous under-the-table payments, simultaneously reported that Marilyn Joy had suffered a mental breakdown due to heavy substance addiction. They fabricated a story claiming she had barricaded herself in a hotel to get high, dismissing her accusations as mere products of paranoia. The lips that were once a symbol of desire were now branded with the image of depravity and illness. Marilyn was fired from every project, shunned by the artistic community, and forced to live the remainder of her life in isolation, taking the secret of the mirror room to her grave without a single mainstream newspaper daring to report the truth. 16. Tamara Dobson, The Infected Lips and the Death Sentence of Malicious Rumors. Standing at 6 feet 2 inches with lips that carried the raw heat of an instinctive flame, Tamara Dobson was not merely an actress. She was a provocative entity of power in the heart of 1970s Hollywood. In her legendary role as Cleopatra Jones, those succulent lips served as a manifesto of black freedom and strength. Yet, behind that invincible exterior lay a tragedy of betrayal deeply tinged with racism. a story the media never dared to reveal. Lydia Vance, a veteran makeup artist who worked at major studios, revealed a black memo circulated secretly within production circles in 1977, which directly executed Tamara's peak career overnight. The nightmare began at a private casting session in the penthouse of an A-list director who held the golden ticket to the Oscars. He presented a naked ultimatum. Tamara would secure the role of a lifetime if she agreed to use her seductive lips to serve him throughout the selection season. With her defiant nature, Tamara not only flatly refused, but departed after delivering a stinging slap that humiliated the director in front of his assistants. Immediately, the machinery of vengeance was set in motion. Instead of attacking her talent, the director chose to strike at a beauty's most precious assets, her purity and dignity. He spread a malicious rumor throughout the elite strata that Tamara suffered from an extremely severe and highly contagious oral infectious disease. Within a week, the lips that were once the desire of every camera lens were suddenly treated as a pathogen requiring quarantine. Lydia Vance recounted with disgust how she witnessed other makeup artists being ordered to wear thick medical gloves and masks when working with Tamara as a form of public humiliation on set. The rumor spread so rapidly that studios immediately canceled every blockbuster contract, citing a fear of infecting the male cast. And this isolation was so brutal that Tamara was relegated to cheap television films and ultimately complete disappearance. She passed away in solitude, carrying the resentment of possessing perfect lips that were labeled toxic by the filthy envy of powerful men who could not own her. 17. Carol Speed, The Gift Lips and the Contract to Erase a Star. The lips of Carol Speed were a form of currency with terrifying power in the underground dealings of 1970s Los Angeles. Her provocatively drooping lower lip transformed her into a sacrificial lamb at private parties within Bel Air mansions, rather than allowing her career to flourish following the 1974 film Abby. Former security officer Marcus Thorne revealed that Carol was monopolized by a powerful group of shareholders who viewed possessing her as a testament to their elite status. The truth lay within the black ledgers of Burbank, where Carol's name was underlined in red ink like a commodity requiring maximum security. Every one of her on-screen kisses was appraised in the private meetings of investors. Marcus recalled party nights reeking of bourbon, where Carol was forced to stand for hours so players could admire those lips under dim lights. They called it a diplomatic kiss, but in reality, it was a violation of dignity in exchange for massive funding for film projects. The tragedy erupted when an A-list starlet, driven by jealousy, paid to bribe police into orchestrating a filthy arrest. On a night in late 1974 at the Continental Hyatt House, police stormed her room, while tabloid reporters stood waiting to accuse her of drug possession and prostitution, even though the evidence had been planted. This trap humiliated Carol's reputation and transformed her lips into a symbol of depravity after just one night of broadcasting. To protect their elite clients, the scandal fixer system scrubbed the police records clean. The moguls coerced Carol into signing a $250,000 silence contract in Century City on a rainy night in 1975. She lived comfortably in the shadows, but was forced to immediately evaporate from Hollywood, vanishing forever. Marcus Thorne recounted that Carol used her iconic red lipstick to slash a long line across a mirror, an act of ultimate resentment, before departing for good. The archive of 17 Black Beauties closes, alongside the shocking truths of beauty within the vortex of Hollywood power. Behind every radiant smile on the screen was a silent scream within high-pressure, million-dollar signing rooms. By hitting the like button right now, you are joining us in acknowledging the secret pain behind the brilliant spotlight. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to ensure these raw truths are never buried again. Your support is the sole force that allows the darkest corners of the cinematic capital to continue being brought to light. See you in the next videos.